everybody, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome back to my newest video tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create what I am calling the semicircular view card. Before we get into the supplies that are needed, I want to invite you to join us in our Facebook groups. We have two of them. I'm not sure that you're aware of that. We have one specifically designed for Lavinia Stamps and all Lavinia products. That group is called the Bello Designs Lounge. The other page that we have is Bello's a la carte. In that group, we showcase all of the other crafty items that are in the shop, such as Sweet Poppy stencils and stamps, Cardio stencils and stamps, Nellie's Choice items, and That's Crafty, and so much more. So join us in both of those groups, and I will guarantee you will learn something new on a daily basis and see some beautiful creations. Okay, let's get started with the supplies that are going to be needed for the semicircular view card. You will need a piece of white card. The white card that I'm using is 4 3/4 inch by 4 3/4 inch. It is a 110-pound card with a 300 GSM rating also. The next item that you will be needing will be a black card. The black card will measure 5 inches by 5 inches, and that is what we will back the white card with. Next, you will need a piece of copy paper, and the copy paper should measure 4 3/4 inch by 4 3/4 inch. It's the exact same measurement as the white card. Right now, we will take a peek at some of the other supplies that I'm going to be using. Let me get this out of the way for a second. You need something round. A circular object. It could be a glass, it could be a small bowl, it could be a roll of tape, and it's up to you the diameter that you want to use. I am using this air hockey puck tool that I like to actually use to help me stamp in my MISTI. Let's take a quick measurement so you have an idea of the diameter. The diameter is almost 3 3/4 inches. It is up to you to pick. There's no rhyme or reason as to why I chose this diameter. I just liked the size of it. The next thing you're going to be needing is some low-tack tape, and I absolutely adore the Sweet Poppy low-tack tape. It's a thin piece of tape, so it's easy to work with, and it never tears the paper that you're working on or your card, and it doesn't stick hardly at all. It's just the perfect amount of stick for that type of work. The inks that we'll be using today, Elements by Lavinia. This is the Bermuda shade. I will also be using VersaFine Clair ink along with the blending brush. This is the color Morning Mist. I will be using my MISTI stamping tool and also an acrylic block. Let's look at the Lavinia stamps that we'll be using. And all my stamps today are from Lavinia. I'm going to bring my card back in so I can show and point to you the exact stamp that I used. In the very center here, which I'm calling my center tree, is the Lavinia Fir Tree LAV022. The tall trees, that is the red pine, the small size, which is LAV592. The trees on the edge, I used Fir Tree #1, and my background trees is the small Fairy Fir Tree #2. The sentiment today is from Lavinia. It is called Snowfalls, LAV648. This is a perfect sentiment for any wintry card that you would like to create. All right, some other things that you are going to need. You will need a fan brush eventually. If you look closely on the card, you'll be able to see some speckles of ink that I spattered with the fan brush. You will need water for that, along with water for cleaning your stamps and a microfiber towel. And I believe that's all I need to share with you as far as the supplies go. So let's jump right into this and get started. Okay, I am first going to start with a piece of the copy paper that measures 4 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. I am going to bring in my circular object here. Again, remember, you can use whatever you want. And I am going to simply place that on my paper, and with a pencil, I am going to trace around the object, and then I will cut out that semicircle. I hope you can see that. All right, for the sake of time, I have already done that. And this is what it'll look like when it's finished. We'll place that on top of the card. And this is where you'll use the Sweet Poppy stencil tape. I'm going to tape this to the back of the card just to keep the card from moving on me. Go this way. I think that'll hold it better. And I am going to add, you know what, that doesn't look right, does it? Let me straighten this out. Sometimes I can be a little too particular, I know, but I want this to come out the best I can. So I'm being careful to match up this edge better than I did initially. Let me get that in place so it doesn't move on me too much. Same thing with this side. All right, that should do. There we go, that's nice and straight. Let me do one more piece on the bottom just for safety reasons there, to hold it all in line. All right, now using the acrylic block, I'm going to start first with my center tree, which is the Lavinia 022 fir tree. I'm going to be placing it on my acrylic block. And I'm going to use an acrylic block instead of the Misty for the trees. And the main reason is I want to be able to press firmly along the edge of this semicircle that's been cut. I want a nice clean image to appear on the edge. Keep in mind the VersaFine, the Elements ink. Oh, I'm talking all backwards today. The Element ink is extremely wet. So you only have to tap very lightly to get a nice coverage of ink. I'm going to try to center this the best I can. Pressing firmly, letting the ink soak into my card. Removing, and that's perfect. I don't need any more to appear other than that. And to be honest with you, I actually like that part right there. Just add some interest. All right, the next stamp that I'm going to use is the Lavinia Red Pine, number 592. Remember, this is the small version. And I am going to continue just with this circular acrylic mount of mine. I don't need this part of the stamp, so for me it's okay that that's dangling off. Keep in mind now, this ink is super wet, so you only need to tap lightly. I'm going to flank my center tree with this tree. I do want this to be a dark shade of the Bermuda ink. Removing. I'm going to add one more. This time I'm going to put it on the opposite side of my center tree, and I'm also going to lower it. I don't want it to be as tall. When you look into the woods or the forests, you know that nothing is perfectly the same height or the same colors. All right, very good. Now, wiping that off, I'm going to move on to my next tree, which is fir tree number 1. And that I'm going to put on the outside of the tree. Oh, I'm sorry, on the outside of these trees. Again, I'm going to stamp this gently. Pressing firmly so I get to the edge. And I want one more on the opposite side. Again, I want to vary the height. All right, now I have my darkest trees on the card. I'm going to work on my background trees. Using the Lavinia Small Fairy Fir Tree number 2, I'm going to ink my stamp and then stamp off onto a piece of scrap paper that I just have laying here. I want a very faint shade of this tree. Oops, that could have been a disaster. Stamping off once, twice, and then I will add the tree to my background. Now remember, there's not much ink left on here, so you really have to press firmly. Good. All right, the same thing I will do on the opposite side. Stamping off. Adding another tree to the background. Excellent, I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to return to the small tree, which is called the red pine. I only want a very light appearance of this tree. Got a little ink there on the edge. I'm going to wipe that off. I'm going to stamp off and use a second generation here. Adding one there, and one last tree on the other side. Stamping off, second generation. I think this one's going to go here and be a little bit different than my original. All right, I'm quite happy with that. Now let me show you how easy this Sweet Poppy tape removes. Because it is so low tack, it peels off so easily. And the result is always exactly as I want it. All right, there is the semicircular view. Now I'm going to add the sentiment, and this is when I will use my MISTI. Let me place this where you'll be able to see better. And using the Snow Falls verse, I'm going to line it up. Now when I line things up, I usually only look at the line that's closest to the edge of a card. So I'm looking at the very last line of this sentiment, and I go from there to make sure that this is nice and straight. I also count my blocks on this paper sheet that's in the MISTI, to help me get it fairly centered. All right, let me pick that up. Make sure I have room there. Yes, that'll be good. Okay, my VersaFine Clair Morning Mist is getting pretty dry. So I'm probably going to have to stamp this a few times to get it dark enough for my liking. A little hack with these inks, when they do become dry, I don't throw them away, and I don't always re-ink. Typically, I save one that is dry, and I use that one for all my second and third generation in stamping. I feel like I'm not wasting the pad if I do that. All right, let's see how much ink I got on that. All right, that's a little light for me, so I'm going to restamp the sentiment. This is what makes the Misty worth every cent, is the fact that you can restamp, and usually you get a great outcome. All right, that works for me. I'm going to leave it at that. The next step will be to add my gray around the edge of the card. So for that, all I need is my VersaFine Clair inks. I'm using my blending brush. Again, my pad is rather dry, so you won't need to do as much as I am if you have a wet one. Always start off onto your work surface and slowly bring the brush to the pad. It's really smart to do a very light layer first and slowly build that layer. I'll just continue around the card with a light layer initially. Yes, I see that smudge there. I'm going to stop and get my lifesaver. This is called a sand eraser made by Tombow. It's called the Sand Eraser Mono. And this thing will save you over and over if you're like me and get inky fingers. So what this does is it slowly sands the ink away from the paper. You don't want to go at it super hard because it does sand the paper. It is removing a very fine layer of the card. So I just want to remove a tad bit. All right, I know it's still visible. I'm not too concerned about that, mainly because I'm going to be splattering this ink. So hopefully some of my splatters will land in that area. All right, going back in, now I want to add another layer to darken my corners. So using a very heavy hand at this point because I really want a lot more ink to appear in my corners. I am pressing extremely hard to get that result. And I do try to keep it as even as possible. That's just one of my quirks. I really only want the darkest areas to be at the top. And as it goes down the page, I want it to be a tad bit lighter, just creating some dimension. I am going to go over some of the sentiment. I'm not too worried that it's blotchy. I kind of like the appearance of the blotchiness. And then the last thing I'd like to do is take my brush and just draw it down over the edge. and almost defines the edge a little bit more, catching just that tip of the paper. Whoops. All right. Okay, I'm somewhat pleased with that. Let me get this corner, make it just a tad bit darker. All right, let me clean off my area and my hands. And I'm going to grab my fan brush, and I'm going to start with the Elements ink in Bermuda, adding just a small amount to my workspace. It's probably way too much. I'm going to spritz it with water, mix it up with my fan brush. Got a little too much water there. Let me clean that up. And I'm going to tap off some of the larger dots and come in over my card and simply add some very small dots in Bermuda. All right, I'm happy with those dots. Show you a little bit. I don't want to do too much. And next, I'm going to do the same thing with the VersaFine Clair. I'm going to add some to my workspace. I'm not bothering to clean my brush. Tapping off the excess water. It's hard to see, but I'm getting just a very light gray coating. All right, clean that off. All right, this time I am going to clean my brush just a little bit. And I'm going to try to get some darker spots. I do see light gray, but I would really like to see some darker spots. So I'm going to add a lot more ink, a little bit of water. I don't need much. Again, I don't want this to be too crazy in the dark area, so just a few splats of this is sufficient for me. It's probably really hard for you to see. But they're very fine. I'm going to even add a few of those over the sentiment. Even if it's just water that's coming off, that'll give a nice effect to the inks that are there. It'll bleach them out in some areas. All right, the last step I need to do is mount this to my card backing. I like using, and my bottle's pretty old as you can tell, the Art Glitter Designer adhesive, my absolute favorite card. Placing that on, pressing it down, and there you have it. That's my semicircular view card. A little bit of wetness there, but that'll dry in time. I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and you'll give this a go at some point. Just think of the view that you could make with the semicircular design with some of the Lavinia flowers. Probably get a really cool look if you changed it up and didn't just use the trees. Well, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate you taking your time to see how I created this, and I will see you soon in the next video. Bye-bye now.